Welcome to the WSO Weekly Wrap-Up, where I talk with my team about the 5 most trending discussions in the Wall Street Oasis community. Enjoy. All right, everybody, welcome to the 4th Weekly Wrap-Up pod. This week we got, I think, 3 top discussions we're going to cover. Matt, go ahead and kick it off.
Yeah, sure. So first one that we saw in the forums this week, not a surprise to anyone. Has anyone here noticed that nowhere in America is affordable anymore? As a younger individual here, we all knew that LA, New York, Miami, typically the hotbeds, but what we've been seeing and some users in our community have been seeing is, places that have typically been not as expensive to live in historically have been jacking up prices in rent, but even just property costs. So, Pat, what's your 2 cents on this? What's going on here in the world for affordability?
I think, as rates have skyrocketed, I think the fastest ever increase. The prices of real estate have come down, but nowhere near enough to offset the amount that rates have gone up. So you look at any sort of affordability index, it was at average in 2020. I'm looking at the National Association of Realtors. It was a 170 back in 2020. It's down to 103. So it's from 170 down to 100 on an index basis. It's crazy. It's almost double the actual cost of housing in terms of buying in. So not a great time to buy a home if you need a lot of debt. If you need a lot of financing, it's going to be painful. So.
But then my question is, Pat, for people that even paying in full, is it the smart thing to allocate all your capital to real estate, right? Where's the best return going to come from now? Do you start thinking, is it going to be stocks in the next 10 years or is it going to be real estate again?
I think real estate's a terrible place to put your money right now, but it's my opinion. I'm on a fixed rate mortgage, so I'm lucky enough that, I don't have to worry about rising rates. People who took out variable loans, people who, are adjustable rate mortgages, ARMs, they call them. I think in Canada, isn't that more common, Matt, or isn't it all adjustable or in UAE?
No, we offer fixed, but we don't have the same term lengths that you guys have. So it'd be
only 5 years.
It's 5-year term. So after
how do you afford
5 years,
how do you afford paying your mortgage back in 5 years?
You don't. Well, sorry. It's renewing. So the payback period is still going to be 20 or 25 years, but your rate is only locked in for 5 years.
Got it.
So you can have a variable rate for 5 years. Upon 5 years, they relook at everything, see if you have additional debt on the property, etc. But it's not I know when we were talking about this, you've locked in your rate for 30 years, which is crazy because now I don't know how the bank's making money off you. That's terrible allocation of funds.
They already split it up and sold it off, just back in 2007-8, the Great Financial Crisis.
Yeah, exactly. But it's definitely discouraging. I don't know, Nabil, how are things in UAE? I know for myself, it's a bit discouraging.
Same. Yeah, here the prices haven't gone down either. So there's interest rate hikes, but there's more demand. So real estate prices still where they are.
They haven't gone down at all. They haven't gone down.
No.
Wow. Here it's down 20%. 10 to 20%, but that doesn't, again, when financing costs have tripled, it's not tripled, but close to tripled.
I also find, Pat, that for us, at least here, there's pockets that have decreased, but there's still some, areas that have maybe only gone down 5, 6, 7%. But at the end of the day, that's where everyone wants to be.
Toronto and good school districts.
You'll see headlines of, prices have decreased 15% to date or whatever it is, but that's not maybe overall, but there's still a lot of hot pockets that haven't really decreased, right? Where the better schools are, where there's maybe, a little bit of a safer area.
Yeah.
I think,
I think putting all your money in Tesla stocks are much better.
Now after it went up double.
No, not now. I was pounding the table though, back at 120 a share, 100. I put my money where my mouth was. Bought some in the low 100s.
Lovely, yeah.
I wish it
double that.
I would have bought triple if it hit in the 90s. I was ready. I had all these limit orders in.
Well, aside from that, I know obviously you're a little bit older than Nabil and I. Would you do anything different, for a young 25-year-old, 26-year-old hustling, but finding it a little bit discouraging? What would be your recommendation? Obviously, it was a little bit different when you were our age, but what would you suggest?
Now that you can, a lot of people I think can get remote flex jobs, I think finding smaller towns that are cool, that are fun for younger folk, I think is an option. What I would say is, let's say prices of real estate keep coming down and rates can kind of rates ease a little bit, maybe like later end of this year, it might be a little bit of a better time, but you got to see another like 10 to 20% drop in real estate prices realistically to like get anywhere near reasonable. And then, you know, in terms of like, you want to get in and start building that, but you definitely don't want to be like handicapping yourself in terms of flexibility and locking yourself in, especially since the decision to buy versus rent, it doesn't make financial sense in most large cities. It just, your price to rent ratio or whatever they call it, it's like 30 plus years. Like you'd have to be renting for 30 years for it to when they're that high versus like a Detroit, if you're in like a Detroit or let's say like a place that's more depressed where there's like migration out there, the price to rent ratio, like why are you renting? Like just buy the place. Cause it's like, you're gonna, you're paying $1,500 a month. You could own a house like for that payment.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like
at least be building some equity at that point.
Yeah, it just depends on the market. Like it just depends on where you are. Like I think you don't want to be like, it's very hard in California. It's very hard in New York or any of these like inflated areas to
Miami.
To do real estate as as a financial investment, especially now with like rates where they are. If you're doing flips, okay, and you know what you're doing, and you're building the homes, that's one thing. But if you're like just buying homes that are already inflated,
speculating,
and trying to rent them out, like your rent isn't even going to cover your mortgage. It's not even come close to cover your mortgage, even with rents kind of having been jacked up.
Yeah, and then a lot of sleepless nights as well.
Just don't. Yeah, I'd say for the young folk, like put your money elsewhere right now. Try to get it in the market gradually, slowly. Look at investing back in yourself, like skills, like just so you can get paid more. There's like the saving and the investing side, but there's also taking you up your pay.
Control what you could control. I think that's the best way to say it there. But this is a perfect segue into the second topic. Don't want to spend too much time just on the first one alone, but up the same alleyway, talking about the cost of being a young professional. So again, similar line of thought here. How do entry-level salaries stack up? And let's choose here a specific location, like in against the cost of living in New York. Naturally, just because the finance hub, a lot of Wall Street jobs are going to be in New York City there. I know, Pat, you lived in New York for some time when you were in investment banking. What are you seeing now, specifically around like the entry levels? Let's call it like an IB analyst first year.
I mean, rents have just skyrocketed back in New York since COVID kind of became.
And they were saying New York's dead.
New York was dead. I didn't believe it. I bought some of the REITs in New York when it was depressed down. I'm like, this is coming back. This city's coming back. Yeah. Although like commercial is scary. Like commercial, I don't think will ever, like it's going to take a long time, if ever, be back to where it was. But the resident,
I don't think it ever gets back. I just can't see it. I think what we're seeing now is like this, especially from the commercial side, there's a push from a lot of companies to really start utilizing the office space, and it makes sense naturally if they own the office space. It's different if they're renting it because they know they could roll that off after they just won't renew their lease and either downgrade or maybe move fully remote. But the individuals that own this real estate and it's on your balance sheet as a company, you want to make sure that it's getting used. Here and there, you could be looking at a little bit of a hurt there.
Yeah, I think in terms of affordability, like for the analysts, if you're making $100K base, I think you're fine. As long as like you're not overextending, like trying to get a 1-bedroom. Like if you just live in a studio or you get a 1-bedroom flex and you have a wall and you're not even at the apartment. So like you just need a place to sleep. And I think at least in my analyst days, I think they still do this. They do like 1-bedroom flex, 2-bedroom flex. You live with one roommate or 2 other roommates. It's a pretty good arrangement.
Well, so I would say this, some cool responses we saw, Pat, were around like, even just talking about that 100K mark. That's typically, people always idolize that. 100K though back in the day is not what it was today. So specifically,
I didn't get paid 100K. I was 55K base.
But then do you remember what your rent was what you were paying in the city?
That's a good question.
Right, so there was one person in the forum who was mentioning, when rent was only $1,700 per month, having that extra couple $1,000 in your pocket, even after you're maxing out your 401k and you have your food costs and just some other basic necessities, you at least got the feel like you've been a bit more successful? You have a couple thousand in your pocket at the end of the month after taking care of what you have to take care of, and it's a good reward for almost like putting in the sweat for being an investment banker, right? Like you want to if you're working 100 hours, you want to feel like you're successful.
People are all like, "Hey, live off your base, bank your bonus." That's like kind of what everyone says. I think my rent was like $1,800 or $1,900 or something like that in my second year, when I had like a third or fourth floor walk up or something, like on 55th and 8th. I lived in 38th and Park. I lived with my girlfriend at that point. She was at Goldman. I was at NPE. So like that was a good setup because split the rent there. That was more expensive. That was like $3,800 a month, but it was just a pretty awesome apartment with views of like Chrysler Building and the Empire State Building like on each side. So it's a pretty sweet apartment. Not like super nice or anything inside, but but just a nice amount of space for New York. And that was a 3,800. You couldn't get that. My guess is that one's like 6,500 now, like or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, if you split it, if you split it and you kind of go to the approach of like, hey, I'm not going to save that much on my base. I think that's fine. Do try to max out the 401k where you can, especially if there's any matching. Just maybe you may not be able to max it out in January and February. You might need to kind of blend it in over the first 9 months to make sure you're not cash crunched. Yeah, that's what I would say. You can always save money eating at the office, every night with Seamless and whatnot, staying late. You save a lot of money that way. So I don't know.
Yeah. Nabil, what are your thoughts though? How's this compare with being in UAE? Do young professionals kind of feel the same way? I know you were saying expensive there as well, but
it's
maybe
is
there different different expectations of what a starting salary is? Would love to kind of get your color on that as well.
Yeah, it's the same thing pretty much where you don't save, especially on the entry level roles. But again, you can save if you're outside the city and all. But if you're in like proper finance, you probably can't afford to stay like too far away because you still have to come into the city. So it is expensive. It's more about like how you budget and like
I will say though,
for a few years I was just like not saving anything pretty much.
Yeah, well,
it just goes.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but you guys aren't paying income tax there, right?
Nothing. Yeah.
So that's right off the bat, you're already roughly 45% better off than a lot of the IB people working out in NYC, right?
Yeah, for sure. But then like
not 45%. That's the effective tax rate.
That's like your marginal.
30,
your marginal, right? Your average is probably 35%.
Yeah,
whatever.
35 percentage. But then like the place where these banks are, like financial hubs are, like everything's expensive around there. So regardless, you'll end up like spending quite a bit. So it depends like where you're staying. You don't end up
the system will get its money somehow, whether it's through rent or taxes. Somehow it's not in our pockets, but it's in everyone else's, right?
I had my bad financial habits back then, so I just used to spend everything.
Matt,
that counts.
You're looking at you were looking at potentially buying, right? But you just can't justify it, right?
No, I mean, we've had those conversations, right, about trying to even maybe have a little bit more long-term mindset on if you're going to buy a place, like factor in, maybe future family, one kid at least, and it just doesn't make sense. I think what it's come down to, unfortunately, I don't agree with, but this is just what it is. You probably need another partner to get it done, like whether significant other. You need two contributions to the mortgage, just because then. You also want to have a lifestyle, right? You don't want to be house poor. That was one thing someone mentioned to me. The last thing you want is, you have a home, but no vacations, no, even just going out for dinner. Like, what type of life is that then at the end of the day, right?
I feel like I have a house, but I have to use my kitchen every night.
Or you want to go out for a nice dinner with your girlfriend, can't do that. Or even just basically, they're not even living an extravagant lifestyle, right? It's just, if you're putting in work and trying to be successful, you want to obviously have a little taste of that, not still have to live paycheck to paycheck. So that's unfortunately where it's at. But enough of the depressing talk there. We got our third and last topic for the week here around networking. So specifically about referrals, Pat, I will let you handle this one as well, just kind of given your expertise in the field. How should candidates approach networking? As well as asking for referrals? Is that common practice in the recruitment process? Do you follow up if you're not getting the referrals? How annoying do you be? How annoying should you not be? Take it away.
Yeah, I think this is a skill that's totally undervalued and like something that's really something you need to practice to get good at. And having EQ, emotional intelligence is really important here to be able to kind of sense what's going on the phone, the style and whatnot. So I think you can absolutely at the end of a call ask, if there's anyone else you think I should be speaking with, or do you mind introducing me to anyone else, and if you think it went well. That being said, being like, can you refer me? You can say, can you give me a referral? It's a little bit awkward. If you ask that way. So like there's ways you can go about it. And the call is kind of more important that you like show genuine interest in that person. And it's not like you're just reading questions off of a list that you read online of like, hey, here are the right questions to ask. I know in our networking course, we have very specific questions as examples. But you'll notice every single one of those questions that we give in the networking course are very specific to like that person's industry. So it's not like you're asking generic questions like, tell me the culture of your, tell me about the culture of this. It's like the person's going to be like, what are you talking about? Like, do you actually want to ask a real question? Like somebody might actually come back if they're really kind of pissed off. They might be like, do you want to ask me like the question you're actually interested in?
Yeah, I think that's the most like standard question you could possibly think
like
of,
it should be more specific about like the group, the deal structure, like what the deal flow.
Even a reference, I heard even referencing a past deal, right? Like specific, like, but obviously like don't make it too cheesy, but if it is something you are interested in, like you thought a deal was unique, maybe asking them a little question there, because one shows you kind of did your research. Understanding the firm,
and
but it's also
shows a little more effort and shows a little more like you've done your homework and you're not just like getting on the phone to get on the phone. That's really or just networking for the sake of networking because they think, oh, I'm supposed to be doing this. It's like, no, it's for your benefit, man. Like it's your benefit. You should be on asking like good questions that you want to learn it so you can learn more.
And I think we could both attest, even just from sales calls, we know when someone's on the line that doesn't want to be on the line, right? So as someone listening to this, they could maybe be thinking, I could pretend, or I won't make it that obvious, but at the end of the day, like genuine human interaction, you'll pick up on that. And then if it's not genuine, anyone with like a decent EQ, like you're gonna figure that out. And more than not, people that are leading these or these, especially in the banking realm, there's a lot of these networking calls. People understand what's going on there. So I wouldn't suggest just hopping on to hop on. You got to be genuine in your approach, or you're probably doing more harm than good. It's actually funny. One of the people in the forums mentioned around, is it common for people that say they're going to refer you then to not actually do the referral? I think that's around like, I would handle that as not being too annoying, right? Like it's at the end of the day, people are just going to say things because they're not comfortable with any sort of altercation. So just say what you want to hear and then kind of go on with their day. And I think that's probably just part of the game. It's all numbers based is how I see it, right? It's all like, you'll reach out to 100 people, 20% will take the time to take a call with you. You're down to now 20 people there. Just, keep breaking it down in like a funnel system. There's going to be people that say to you, yeah, we'll refer you, and then just not do it. I think it's key not to tarnish yourself by
the fact the person was so wrapped up in that, it just makes me feel like they're so worried about one referral, like they're not they're the top of their funnel is probably too narrow. You know what I mean? It's like you shouldn't be getting so wrapped up over one call and not get, the person said they were going to refer me. It's like, well, haven't you had like 5 other calls since then? And you know what I mean? Like it should just be about like getting better at that skill, making a genuine connection, building a relationship, and adding value any way you can in terms of like, hey, I found this interesting, staying in touch every 6 months, kind of staying top of mind so that you can get those opportunities. Because I know there's a lot of people who already have jobs or are looking to make the transition. Like in the live chat we did, they're like, hey, how do I go from middle office to front office? And I'm like, internally it's super tough. But externally, you can, you should be building that network and actually improving how you speak and how you interview and all that good stuff. So, yeah.
Is it similar concept, Nabil, out in UAE around networking, a lot of coffee chats?
Same thing. Like networking's the same, pretty much. I think networking, like most people treat it like networking, but I just think of it as like making friends. Like you don't want to, like you're just making friends pretty much. So even if you don't get like what you want out of it, you just make a good friend. And usually if you want to ask for a referral, like you could ask them advice, like, like once they get to know you a little more, like let's say you talk maybe once, maybe you follow up, catch on. I mean, meet them, and then they like you. You could ask them, hey, what do you think? If I had to work at a place like yours, like what are the things I'd have to work on, something like that. And then generally the conversation, if they're into you, it'll automatically go towards that, like, hey, you know what? Yeah, you seem like a good fit. I could refer you to someone or something, or whatever. Like, or rather than like treating it more like, oh, I need to ask these questions. I need to, comes off like really fakeish. Like,
Yeah.
especially when some people treat it like completely professionally. I like to think of it like just making friends. Just be super like don't be inappropriate, but like make friends. Yeah, pretty much. And
I
you never
agree.
know,
I think.
like,
No,
oh
go
yeah,
ahead
I
there.
mean, I was saying like you never know, right? There are people who've like contacted me like 2-3 years after I first reached out to them, who've been like, hey, there's an opening. Do you want to join or something like that? So like you
Yeah.
just keep them warm, just be friends, and you never know when the opportunities come, right? So
Yeah, I was going to mention. I think it's all about, or a big factor of networking's patience, right? It takes time to
yeah,
form these relationships, and I think if you are going in with the idea that you're looking to get something out of the relationship, within a month or so, like it's probably
yeah,
destined to fail.
yeah,
I find the best things where I've gotten something out of my network has been from the relationships that have been long-standing, multi-year, and it never stemmed from a place of, I want something from you in a short period of time.
yeah,
It's always been, let's set it, like, let's build a genuine relationship with each other. I know what field you're in, you know what field I'm in, you know my skills, I know your skills. We know how we can learn from each other. But eventually our paths are going to cross, whether that be in 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, and that's where you reap the benefits of a successful like networking relationship.
Yeah, look at
exactly. Yeah.
Grace. Grace, one of my mentees, she started freshman year, and like by the time she was a junior, she had like offers everywhere because she
Yeah.
was just like on top of it, building those building those friendships, those relationships early. So by the time she was like interviewing at end of sophomore year, junior year, people were like they knew her already.
I think even like I saw something that, you tell me if this is wrong. I thought it was a cool idea, but it was around that I saw someone networking and they actually just created like themselves a little spreadsheet, just keeping track of when they would have meeting or met that person last, where it was, but even just like a few notes from that meeting there. And it could be personal things like this person's
Oh, we
expecting
have a sheet. Yeah,
a
we have a spreadsheet.
child,
Yeah, we have
or
a template.
right. Oh,
We
see,
have a
that's
template.
something
Yeah.
I didn't even realize, and I saw that. I'm like, that's just great. I think because again, if you're able to reference things, like if you're going to go on like your second coffee chat with someone that maybe met with a couple months ago, and you maybe ask them, well, how was that wedding you mentioned a few months ago that you were going for your
Yeah.
buddies or whatever it was, it just puts you in a better position versus everyone else. It's personalized. It makes them feel good that you've actually listened to them and you actually are interested in learning more about their experiences. So I think that
Yeah,
can
and
be.
conditional formatting can help you here. If you put in the date of when you actually first met them and you have conditional format, if it's past 6 months, it kind of turns red or whatever. Like,
That gets you to want to reach out to them again, I guess.
yeah, like I should be pinging
Yeah.
them and stuff like that. Like it's a good way to stay on top of the on
And
that.
that's in our networking guide.
Yeah,
That's
we
Yeah.
have it.
all right.
We've
Wall
got a
Street Oasis
template.
networking guide. Check it out, guys. That's huge.
Well, we don't sell it standalone. It's on any of the interview courses. You get the networking course included. So private
There
equity
you go.
course, investment banking, consulting, or hedge funds, it's included as part of the package. So, anyways,
Cool. Very useful.
call it. Yeah.
Yep. I think that's we'll call it this week, guys. Thanks to everyone for listening. We'll be back next Thursday with another great pod.
And thanks to you, my listeners at Wall Street Oasis. If you have any suggestions whatsoever, please don't hesitate to send them my way, Patrick at wallstreetoasis.com. Until next time.